Imagine being Chinese and running a spinning mill in Shandong Province or somewhere, which is very regular. Every day the cotton comes in, every day the cotton comes out, and you're tweaking this and you're tweaking that, and it's very year in, year out, it's always the same. Then imagine going out to Cubby Station and there's this big dopey Aussie bloke standing there saying, mate, we don't have any water this year. Imagine the relationship that requires to bring that Chinese investor to Australian agriculture. And you saw the supply network. Remember we were talking yesterday about a supply network rather than supply chain. Paul's really reconstructed the supply chain to become a network. And this Chinese investment is a really productive thing. So a lot of heat and light about foreign investment, but there's an active and real example right there in front of us of how that can work. So well done, Paul. That's very interesting. Okay, now I'm going to invite Jim Engelke to come forward. Now Jim's running the Ord Stage 2 project up in Kununurra, and again a foreign investment, again a very interesting perspective on agriculture and quite a challenging task to boot. So please welcome Jim Engelke.
Thank you. Global agriculture in 10 minutes. That was the brief I got. Easy, no problem. Well, I had to make some changes because when I got the topic, I thought, well, global agriculture is some nebulous thing that we all think's happening offshore. Well, global agriculture, as you just heard from Paul, is happening here. But I changed the title just the same, and I called it Global Agriculture Local Focus. What do I point this at? That, got it. Before I get into the global side of it though, I think I better go through what our project is, and I suspect there's a few people that know a little bit about it. Probably some of you don't know much at all, but it's based in politics, how we started. And if we go back to 2008, anyone from Western Australia will remember that the National Party took balance of power. A chap by the name of Brendan Grills, who was the leader of the National Party, decided that a thing called royalties for regions was a good idea. What he did was basically start to take some of the royalties from the mining boom that is now finished, as most people would know, and pump it back into the regions. Now, one of the beneficiaries of that money was the project that I'm currently working on. What the state and the federal government did at that time was to develop infrastructure in Kununurra, and that simply really was an extension of a road, a building of a channel or an expansion of a channel, plus there was a little bit of social, or a fair bit of social infrastructure went in around town as well. So that's how we got going. Kai, and that's what we call Kimberley Ag Investment, came along, and I started with them from the very beginning. We wrote a bid to say, look, we'll develop that land, and here's our plan. Some of you will have heard the sugar plan. Things have changed, but I'll go through that in a minute. But fundamentally at the basis of all of it was really a scale, integrated, diversified primary production system. And that remains the case today, even though we might have moved from sugar a little bit. There's three of the things that we're missing so desperately in Kununurra, and the things that we suffer most from are logistics and the challenges around it, and I'll probably touch on that a bit later. Some of the irrigation costs and setting things up, and a lack of processing. So Paul there had a pretty good example, excuse me, of how processing's being done more efficiently. A couple of other things we've done to sort of balance up that infrastructure issue for us, because we're remote. You've got to look after yourself. If you don't think about it, worry about your own problems, no one else really is there to do so. So we've set up also Case IH and Iveco dealership. So we partnered early on with people we thought could support our business, and machinery was one of those important things that we needed to get done. There's lots of other examples, but this is a 10-minute snapshot. Just a quick orientation for those of you who don't know the region. Kununurra Township's down here. Lake Argyle, for those of you who know about it, is a freshwater lake to the south of town. Wyndham, Port, that's about 100 kilometres from Kununurra to Wyndham. The area of land you're going to see a few photos of in the next couple of slides is this parcel here, which we call Goomig. The beige colour is around about 7,500 hectares. Kai also have this parcel of land here and approvals in place to develop that. That's a further 6,000. In the last month, some of you may have seen, may have heard a little bit of media that we've also purchased the Carlton Hill Station, which is the surrounding land, Ivanhoe and Carlton, I might add, the surrounding land around Kununurra. Within that station, there's a further 8,000 to 10,000 hectares available for development on the plain. We also are going through the approvals process for Mantini, which is a 4,000 hectare lot. You may notice that line up and down there. That's the Northern Territory border. And this is what people are loosely referring to as Ord Stage 3, which is not progressing at this point in time. There's a further 14,000 hectares over there. So that's the already developed land, and that's an area of around about 15,000 hectares. So our project is significant. We're talking fairly conservatively in the order of 20,000, 22,000 hectares for us. There's also sandy country further to the north, 20, 30,000, take your pick. It'll depend on how much water we can get. So that's a snapshot of the area. And that, look, I've only got a couple more slides, but I thought I'd pick out just a few of the things that are making us successful today. It's not, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. We're only at early stages of a fairly big project. But number one, and I've heard it yesterday, was people. People are the key. We have an interesting outfit where we have Chinese investors, and Mr. Wu is our primary investor. He's a self-made man. He's a son of a farmer. So we're not an enormous corporate structure in some respects. People call us corporate, and I guess we are, but really the feel of us is probably a large family farm, given that we're owned by a man and his family. So the style of our business is quite different. We also have a lot of Indigenous, local Indigenous people working for us. So I've got culture all around me here that's, and diversification that I'm managing. But certainly around the people side, if there's any advice I can give you is manage the people. If you're a manager, manage people, don't manage paper. Managing paper doesn't make anyone any money that I'm aware of. So if you're a manager, make sure you manage your people and you'll get the best out of them. Just quickly on the Indigenous thing, and I get a lot of questions, and it's perhaps not relevant to this audience so much, but a lot of people ask me, you know, are they good? And they are. And what do I expect? And I expect them to be better than everyone else, and I tell them that. But I also tell my own people, I expect you to be the best you can. It's amazing what you can get out of your own people, and I think Paul touched on that very briefly, is that you can get a lot of things out of your own people if you just expect it out of them. If they're used to not performing, or they believe that your expectation of them is low, that's exactly what they'll give you every day, day in, day out. Local support and engagement, we do that pretty well, we think, both Indigenous, non-Indigenous. Another one of the key aspects of our success is internet and email. It's a beautiful thing to be able to send an email in English to China, and for Western Australia, remember, we're on the same time zone as China. I can have a response back in 15 minutes, so it's gone in English, converted to Mandarin or Shanghainese in my case. I get a response back in English. It's pretty quick. Internet is really the tool that has allowed, I think, the non-English speaking investment into this country happen. I don't think without internet and email, I'd be standing here today telling you about this project and Mr. Wu and his Chinese company that's backing it. But to finish on probably a more sombre note, perhaps in some ways, and some people may wonder why I've got those three titles down the bottom, is that a key to success in anything is attention to detail, and that is whether you're a small farmer or a global operator like we, I suppose, are. And I've put down here ground preparation, weed control and timing. Now, you can go on about all the innovation under the sun, but what you have to do is remember the core components or the fundamentals of your business that actually make you money. For us, getting those three things right means we can entertain all sorts of innovation. If we get any one of those wrong, all the innovation in the world isn't going to save us. So don't forget your core business is the message. make sure your core business is working well, then get the benefits of innovation. And I think last night we heard about that. You want to enjoy the benefits of it, set yourself up so you can. A few more pictures. Mr. Wu over here, he's the big boss in China. We had an Indigenous art exhibition in Shanghai a couple of years ago now. That was just one of the things that we did for local engagement. Mr. Yin, he lives in Australia. He's my boss in Kununurra. That's Brendan Grills, who I speak of, Royalties for Regions man. Teddy Carlton, he was the CEO of MG Corp at the time. Down the bottom, for those of you who don't know, we grow a lot of chia. That's chia. Mr. Yin, the now chairman of MG Corp, Des Hill. So just a little bit on farming, and I've got no words there, but the integrated agriculture I talk about is cotton, is grain, and is cattle. There's also some talk of aquaculture, but that's probably more long term. So our focus at the moment is to get a cotton industry up. We're already in the grains industry, as you can see from that photo, and expanding fairly quickly on about 1,500, 2,000 hectares a year. And cattle feeding as basically byproducts of the cotton ginning process and offal from the grain grading process. We also own the station, so irrigation of a bit more country is also possible. Challenges, and this will be my second last slide. I guess one of the things we find, and it's a little curious, is that we're seen as Chinese in Australia, and we're seen as Australian. We're seen as Chinese in Australia and Australian in China. That leaves us stateless sometimes, and it can be awfully frustrating when you come and talk to our bureaucrats and they say, "What's your problem?" We tell them about a problem in China, and they say, "What's your problem? You're Chinese." You go, "Well, yeah, we're not really," but then we go to China and say, and they say, "Well, you're Australian, go back to Australia." Oh, okay. So we sort of occupy that zone when you hand your passport to the immigration officer and you're effectively in that holding pattern until you get onto your international flight. We sit somewhere in there. It's a hard place to be. Challenges are industry establishment, capital, people, skills, opening up markets. It's all doable, but it's a challenge. Logistics is our big headache. We need to be able to realise the benefits of being close to Asia. And Paul touched on it. A little bit of policy, probably from our point of view, clarity would be nice, and perhaps public perception of agriculture. And that's probably a challenge for the industry generally, not us. But certainly policy in this country around agriculture, I think, is probably a little bit immature and needs a little bit more work. But I'm not going to pick on politics today as my topic of discussion. That's just my last photo. That's our laser bucket team. We have a lot of heavy earthworking gear, but that's one I left on, and that was a crop of sorghum last year. That's me.
Again, imagine explaining to a Chinese investor, you know, we're going to develop all this country up in the order. You know, imagine the legislative, you know, restrictions you had to explain to that investor. Imagine the community consultation that you had to go through, the cultural and Indigenous engagement you had to perform. The climate up there is full-on tropical, it's full-on wet or full-on dry. You know, imagine explaining that. And the isolation, it is actually the far corner of the earth up there. It's as far from anywhere as you can get, but unbelievably close to Asia. So you feel like you're just in the back end of the world, but Asia damn near a throw a stone away. But what does it come down to, Jim? It comes down to people, you know, it comes down to how we manage these people. If you manage people, you can do anything.